Chinese is considered the most difficult language to learn in the world. I've searched many websites, universities, and language learning institutions. Most of these resources rank Chinese as the hardest language to learn. Even if it's not ranked first, Chinese is often amongst the top of the list. Today, let's talk about why Chinese is so difficult, what characters does it have, and for beginners, how to make its learning process a bit easier and more interesting. Hello everyone, I'm Brandon, a Chinese who speaks a bit of English. According to some studies, it takes about 500 hours to reach a conventional level in Chinese. It takes about 1,200 hours to reach a level where you can communicate at work, and to reach a professional level, it takes over 2,200 hours of study. Although these studies may not be entirely accurate, and language learning is influenced by personal talent and interest, we can still draw a conclusion that learning Chinese is really not easy. So why is learning Chinese so difficult? This is related to the characteristics of Chinese. First, Chinese has 4 tones plus light tone, so we can simply understand that Chinese actually has 5 tones. The same pronunciation, when pronounced with different tones, can have completely different or even opposite meanings. For example, 猪, when pronounced in the first tone, 猪, it means pig, an animal. In the second tone, 竹, it becomes bamboo. When pronounced in the third tone, 煮, it means to cook, as in boiling food in water. In English, we can translate it as boil or boiling. In the fourth tone, 助, it can mean to help or to assist. In English, that's help. Let's take another example, 飞. In the first tone, 飞, it means to fly. It means flying in the sky. In the second tone, 肥, it means fat. It can be translated as fat. We can say pork fat for fatty meat. In the third tone, 肥, it can be a noun meaning the one who rubs. In English, that's rubber. In the first tone, 废, it means useless. It refers to something that's been used and is no longer useful. It can be translated as waste, wastewater. The same pronunciation can represent different meanings, which can be very confusing for beginners during the learning process. If it were just that, it might be not so difficult, but here comes the problem. Even the same pronunciation with the same tone can represent different meanings. For example, as we just discussed, 助 as a verb can mean to help or to assist. It can also mean to wish or to bless. For example, I wish you blah 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 blah. It can also mean to live, to live. I live there. I live there. Not to mention Chinese beginners, even for native Chinese speakers like us, if you only say 猪, I won't even know what you mean. So in most cases, we need to rely on context, the meaning of the surrounding words, and the conversation to analyze what a particular pronunciation actually means. The second character of Chinese is characters. The relationship between Chinese characters and their pronunciations isn't just minimal, it's almost non-related. In English, when you say a word, by learning its pronunciation rules, you can make a guess about how it's pronounced. For example, like, L-I-K-E. If I don't know it, I might guess it's pronounced like, leak, or likey. One of these might be right, or none of them is right, but at least I have a chance to guess. In Chinese, when you see a character, you have no idea how it's pronounced. Before I formally learned to read and write in Chinese words, I could speak Chinese fluently, but I couldn't read or write. So our writing system is completely separated from our pronunciation systems. The third character of Chinese is the coexistence of classical and modern words. China has a history of thousands of years. Over this period, decades, centuries, or even thousands of years ago, the language our ancestors used and the language we use today are different. Although there's connection, for example, the words, ancient poems, idioms used by the ancestors are not easy for us to understand today without studying on purpose. If you just show them to me, I'd also have trouble guessing their meanings. Moreover, classical Chinese education is an important part of Chinese students. In Chinese classes, from elementary school to high school, and even in some college majors, we are constantly studying classical Chinese. Common classical phrases we use today include 三心二意, 南辕北辙, 岌岌可危, and so on. These things require Chinese learners to gradually understand them. So fourthly, I believe Chinese function words and major words are also challenging. Taking major words as examples, you can say an apple, 一个苹果, a horse, 一匹马, a desk, 一张桌子, a bike, 一辆自行车, a squirrel, 一只松鼠, a cow, 一头牛. Between each numeral and noun, we insert a major word. Different major words represent different types of things. So learning major words is a different part. So, compared to other languages, does Chinese have any content that's relatively simpler? Yeah, of course. Some grammar in Chinese is simplified. For example, our nouns don't change by quantity. In English, you add an S to indicate many. 2 apples, 100 apples, and 1,000 apples. But in Chinese, there's no such change. 一个苹果, 2个苹果, 10个苹果, 100个苹果和10000个苹果都是苹果. And our verbs don't have tense changes. For example, in English, a verb often has 3 tenses. You need to remember go, went, gone. I'll go there tomorrow. I went there yesterday. And he's gone. The 3 tenses of a verb are completely different, requiring you to memorize them separately. But in Chinese, 走 is just 走. You can 走 in the past, you are 走 now, and you will 走 in the future. No matter what, the characters for what remains unchanged. The second simple point is that Chinese syllables are relatively simple. In Chinese, each syllable is a character. 就是一个字. 来, 去, 你, 我, 树. In other languages, sometimes a word or meaning requires multiple syllables to pronounce. Helicopter, refrigerator, water, snake, buffalo. So comparatively, Chinese syllable structure is simple. The third character is that the most basic unit in Chinese is the character. As long as you understand the meaning of a character, you can guess the meaning of words or even phrases and sentences formed by the character. For example, 飞机. 飞 means to fly, and 机 means machine. So 飞机 is a flying machine. Flying machine is airplane. Or 电冰箱. 电 means electricity or power. 冰 is ice, and 箱 is case. 所以电冰箱. So 电冰箱 is a box that needs power and contains ice, which is a refrigerator or fridge. So in most cases, when you understand the basic meaning of a character, you can guess the meaning of words, phrases, and sentences formed by that character with a relatively high accurate rate. Now that we know which parts of Chinese are difficult and which parts are easier, what can we do to make the process of learning Chinese simpler? I personally have 3 suggestions. First, you must learn Pinyin well, because even in China, people who learn Pinyin well have more standard pronunciations and a relatively higher Chinese level. Second, when you're just starting to learn Chinese, at the very beginning, don't try to learn Chinese characters at all. Focus on listening and speaking, because we have mentioned before, Chinese characters and their pronunciations are completely separate. They have almost no connection. If you try to write characters and learn writing at the very beginning, you will greatly increase the difficulty of learning. For example, children, before they go to elementary school or even kindergarten, they might not be able to read at all. If you give them a book, they cannot understand it, but they can communicate fluently with adults. Although their vocabulary and grammar might not be complex or advanced, smooth communication is not a problem. So in the initial stage of learning Chinese, you can put all your energy on listening and speaking. Third, use every opportunity you can think of to listen, speak, and practice more. Because generally speaking, people who live in a specific language environment tend to learn and understand that language faster. People learn English in an English-speaking country might learn much faster than those who learn English in a non-English-speaking country. What's convenient now is to watch Chinese news, TV shows, and movies, or listen to Chinese radio. You can also use websites, mobile apps, and PC software to actively find people to talk to and practice with. During the learning process, don't worry about issues like incorrect pronunciations or misusing grammar that might affect your communication. Research shows that even in China, more than 20% of people can't communicate fluently in Chinese. We have at least 7 major language systems and over 200 dialects. In some special places, even people living on the opposite sides of the city, or the same mountains, or the same village, they might have difficulties communicating. For example,
干什么？干嘛？干嘛呢？干啥？能啥嘞？做甚？做咩啊？做啥子？搞么子噻？
you see, what are you doing has almost completely different pronunciations in different dialects. So, during the process of learning Chinese, you don't need to be afraid of making mistakes in pronunciation or vocabulary, and be afraid to speak. So, what can you get in this channel? I'll do my best to break down Chinese pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, and sentence structures based on different scenarios and situations, share with you how to express yourself in Chinese. Now, before the end of this video, I want to ask you a simple question. Why do you want to learn Chinese? Based on my opinion, if you want to do something well, you need 2 factors. Perhaps you really like it and you enjoy the process very much. It brings you joy or a sense of accomplishment. Okay. Or you have a clear purpose. You want to study in China, travel there, you have friends in China, and you want to communicate with them, and so on. If you like both of these, it may not have an impact in the beginning, but you may not be able to persist in the long run. If you are watching this video and have just started learning Chinese, you might want to ask yourself, why do I want to learn Chinese?